Right, hello, Year Sixes. My name is Mr. Collins, and I'd like to talk to you briefly about the transition from Year Six to Year Seven in science. Now, you guys are very lucky at this because, unlike most schools, you've got a specialist science teacher in Year Six, Mr. Sagan, and he's been getting you ready already for secondary school science. Okay, because most primary school students don't have specialist science teachers. So you've been very lucky, and he's been getting you into the idea of investigations and showing you some of the equipment which we're going to continue to be using in secondary school. Now, some of the biggest differences that you're going to have next year compared to this year, probably the one biggest difference is going to be you're going to have your lessons in specialist science labs. And those are going to be labs where you've got access to much more equipment than you do in primary school. There's gas taps, so we can use things like Bunsen burners for heating. We've got lots of glassware. We can use test tubes, beakers, conical flasks, and things that we can use for chemistry experiments. We've got all kinds of electrical circuits, so much stuff that you're going to get to use over the next few years. So it'll be really great to get you guys into the science labs and to start doing lots of extra experiments, things that you haven't been able to do in primary school. But hopefully you're already familiar with kind of how science works. And science is made up of three kind of individual disciplines, which are biology, chemistry, and physics. And I know that this year you guys have done certainly a little bit of physics recently with electricity, and I know you've been doing some biology with things like respiration, I think, and digestion. And those are the things that you'll be covering again at some point in secondary school. But we'll also be doing lots of new topics that maybe you guys haven't ever come across before. Now, I want to take you through today the topics that we're going to cover in Year 7. And what's on the screen at the moment is what we call the Key Stage 3 Science website. And it's a website that we've created as science teachers here at BISC for you guys to help you in terms of knowing what's coming up next. And if you miss lessons, what you can go back on to check and things when you're in secondary school. So as you can see here, science is the most important school subject. Okay, it helps us to answer all of those kind of interesting questions that maybe you've been asking for a long time. Why is the world round? Why do we need air? It helps us to put people into space. It helps our doctors. Helps us to produce power. So science is really important for society, and what we want is you guys to, one, be really interested in it, and two, to get good at it so you can go to, in the future, either have a job involving science where you can help to make the world a better place, or just a good background knowledge of science so that you can understand things a bit like, the coronavirus problems we've got at the moment. If you've got a good level of science, you've got a better understanding of those things that affect us every day. So I've split the website. The Key Stage 3 website is for Year 7 and Year 8. So if you look on the left-hand side here, we've got this menu bar, Year 7 and Year 8. Well, in Year 7, we've got 5 units we're going to study. Okay, the first one's like a welcome to science. It's only going to be a short unit, and it's covering lots of the things that you guys have already touched on. So it's going to include safety. It's going to include equipment that we use, techniques for using the equipment. So on here, there's some videos and some slides. There's some information that kind of helps you to have a better understanding of what we're covering. So I will share the link to this website with you guys so that, if you've got time now in Year 6 or over the holiday and you want to look ahead at what you're going to be doing in Year 7 science, this is a resource we give to students when it comes to end of unit tests so that they can make sure that they're prepared. Once we've kind of covered this and made sure that you've got, for some reason that's not there at the moment, but once you guys have and we've made sure that you've covered all the things we need you to know from Year 6 and a bit of extra things like using a Bunsen burner and things like that for heating, then we're going to go on to the next unit, which is all about acids and alkalis. So this is chemistry now, and you're going to be carrying out a lot of practical work. This is one of the reasons why you teach you safety things at first, because some of the substances that you're going to use are going to be dangerous. They could be corrosive. That means if you spill them on your clothes or your hands and leave them there, they can eat away at the material or your skin. So we've got to be a little bit careful with how we use them. So we're dealing with acids and alkalis. We're looking at how we can work safely with these things. So we're looking at the labels on the chemicals and what they mean and how we've got to use them and what happens if we spill them and things like that. We're looking at how we identify different materials, whether it's an acid or an alkali. We're going to end up making indicators. So we're going to carry out experiments to find out, are things acids or are they alkalis or bases, as it says here. And you're going to make yourself from red cabbage an indicator which you can add to different chemicals to tell if they're acids or alkali. So there's going to be lots of experimental work in year 7, okay, particularly in this first unit on acids and alkalis, where you're going to be testing substances to find out what's inside them. And we're going to be looking at a process called neutralization, which is very important in science, where we actually have to get rid of an acid by adding an alkali to it to cancel it out and turn it into a neutral. So we're going to be doing some experimental work and some theoretical work on what neutralization is as well. So that's the first unit, chemistry. After that, it's going to be some physics, which is on energy and electricity. I know you guys have already done some work on electricity this year with Mr. Sagan. Okay, so the first part of the unit is going to be looking at how we get our energy. So obviously you kind of take it for granted when you switch on your TV or you charge your mobile phone or iPad, whatever it is you're using, that there's electricity there all the time. But I don't know if you really thought of where it comes from. So we're going to be looking at the different types of energy that exist. It's a bit slow loading up at the moment to show you. So we're looking at the different forms that energy comes in and how energy gets changed from one type into another. But then we're going to be looking at how we actually create electrical energy to use, okay, and what the sources of energy are. So the sun is the ultimate source of most of our energy on the earth, but we've got to find ways of harnessing that energy, which might be using hydroelectric power from damming rivers, or burning fossil fuels, or nuclear power stations, or solar power, and things like that. So you see on here, we've got lots of broken this down into the different ways we might produce energy. And then we've got some things on electricity. So you're going to be doing static electricity. It means you're going to get a chance to use the Van de Graaff generator, which is you've probably seen on photos where people put their hands on the metal ball and their hair stands up. That's something you guys are going to be doing in year 7. You're going to be making lots more electrical circuits and going to a little bit more complex circuits than you have in year 6. Then we're going to do some biology. The biology is all about living things. So we're going to be looking at cells, because all living things are made up of cells, and animals and plants are made up of slightly different cells. So we'll be looking at how they are different. We're going to be looking under microscopes to see if we can see some parts of the cells and looking at different structures of cells. Because it turns out there's lots of specialist cells you see on here, cells that do particular jobs in your body. So we're going to be looking at onion cells under a microscope, but we're going to be looking at some cells as well that maybe we can't see under a microscope ourselves, but we're going to be looking at how they function. Okay, so it might be things like you see here, there's sperm cells, blood cells, nerve cells, there's a palisade cell, all kinds of cells on there anyway that you're going to be learning about in your lessons. And within that unit as well, we're going to learn about photosynthesis, which is the way that plants make glucose, which is sugar, like their food, from sunlight. We're going to be looking at some processes called diffusion and osmosis, which occur in living things as well. And finally, the last part of year 7 is going to be a bit of a physics and chemistry overlap. We're going to be looking at solids, liquids, and gases. So we're looking at the difference between solids, liquids, and gases, which is something I think you've probably covered in primary school already. We're looking at how we can change solids into liquids and gases, or vice versa. We're going to be looking at density, okay, and why some objects float and some don't float, and how we can test how dense an object is, things like that. What else have we got to cover? All kinds of things on here. Thermal expansion. When you heat things, they get bigger. We're going to do some experiments on that. I don't think we're going to end up doing the Brownian motion. It says it's an extension there. We look at pressure and at heat flow. So I'm going to share the link to this website with you guys, so you can look ahead at what's coming up. Obviously, you're going to have specialist science teachers. It could be that your teacher is a biology specialist, a chemistry specialist, or a physics specialist. They're all going to know everything about what they need to teach you in year 7. You can even, if you want, have a look ahead to what happens in year 8. You can see those topics are also on this website. The other thing I'm going to share with you is a video which actually I sent out to some of my students in the last couple of weeks as part of their distance learning, which was going through an experiment that although they couldn't do it in the classroom, I wanted to show them. And it was all about measuring how quickly a chemical reaction happened. So I'm going to share the link to that video so you can watch it. Now, don't worry if you don't understand everything that goes on in the video, because you haven't done the work leading up to it. But I'd like you to see it just so that you get an idea of some of the things that we'll be doing in secondary school science, and you'll see some of the equipment that we use, okay, and how the lessons are going to be a bit different to what you do in primary school. So the key things we want are really you to enjoy science, so that at the end of your time in this science lessons, hopefully it's your favorite subject or something that you've really enjoyed. We want you to have a good knowledge and understanding of science, and so when you see things in the news, you understand the science behind them, instead of sometimes now we see all kind of fake news things and people believe them. Hopefully you'll have a background knowledge to make sure you really do understand that, and maybe some of you will go on to do careers in science as well. And that's what I want you to get out of science at secondary school. Okay, so I'm going to share the link to the website with you, and I'm going to share a link to a video of a distance learning lesson I produced, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you very much.